Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
Joining us on the Star Line is a woman who transformed her life from the rural South to a career in the United States Foreign Service as a diplomat, which she discusses in her new book, Muddy Roads, Blue Skies. It's Vella Mbenna. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's go beyond the mic. Born in the hometown community of Midway, Georgia, what's your favorite memory growing up?
My favorite memory growing up was probably going to church because it got me out of our house, out of our front yard where we were like in prison. So I say, I was free there. I could do, a lot of things. I could meet my friends. I could talk to adults, pick their brains. I think that was my favorite. In addition to just playing with my sisters and brothers and learning from them. To me, that was the best of what I could experience as a child.
You discussed the efforts that you made to try to leave home, but in the end, you ended up returning back to it.
Yeah, I think because my mom and dad held a tight rein around us, and we just could not go out beyond that yard. So I bonded real deeply with my brothers and sisters, and my mother and father. So home was like my safe haven. So even though I had the wanderlust to get out there and see what was beyond, the blue clouds of hometown Georgia, I still loved home. And actually, a lot of people always wonder why I always go back home. I'm in the Foreign Service and I can go to Paris, London, all these places from my assignment, let's say, in the middle of Africa. But I would go home to hometown because whenever I would drive on that ramp, I just felt safe and I felt loved.
Your sisters made an impact in your life. Rachel, Emma, they all, from pledging a sorority, they kind of guided you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. One was nurturing, that was Rachel. She just wanted to make sure I was safe from what was out there. She was much older. Actually, everyone swore that I was her daughter because she just nurtured me. Even today, and I needed that because I liked the home, the motherly, type environment. But the other one, Emma, oh my Lord, she was like, go get her, You don't need to be babied. I'm not going to hug you. I'm not going to, give you money. Do it on your own. Learn from your mistakes. It was good from both angles, having that nurturing and having the go get it, go out there, make it on your own attitude. And I found a happy medium, and that's who I am today. I truly believe that people should go out there and make it on their own. You fall, you get back up. But in the meantime, I know that they're human and they will need some nurturing, So they did, both of them, as well as the others, made a huge impact as to who I am today.
As the oldest of the 6 kids in our family, there's an impact the oldest plays. How many kids are in your family and where do you place among them?
5 brothers and 4 sisters and myself, so 11 of us.
Growing up with 6, sheesh, I could see how 11 was a fight.
It was, and I was the youngest, and, and everyone always said that, Mom and Dad favored you. You didn't have to go in the gardens to plant the corn, you just cried and they'll send you back. They tease me today. It's like, oh, goodness, we knew you were going to be a paper pusher. We knew that you weren't going to do anything, that was rough. But, needless to say, it is rough being a diplomat. You do get your hands dirty. You get your mind dirty. You get, it's just mind-boggling what I got into in the end.
Well, let's talk about that. 26 years a diplomat, serving 13 foreign countries. Quick quiz. Can you name all 13?
Of course. Philippines, Peru, Germany, Guatemala, Tanzania, Lebanon. Well, I might name the city instead of a country. Lebanon, Uganda, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Afghanistan, and Tunisia. And I did 2 stateside tours. So that's, makes a total of 15.
Of all those countries that you named, it sounds like a who's who of where not to go.
Exactly. Oh God, after about my third tour, I can't remember which countries, we have a hail and farewell at when someone comes to an embassy. And when I told, my colleagues and ambassador all the places I've been and what happened there when I was there, they're like, oh my God, the ambassador said, I will never accept you at any of my posts because you bring disaster. You go to all the dangerous posts. But I love it. I mean, that's me. I joined the Foreign Service to be in the midst of it, not to hang out in Paris or Rome or, some plush country, as they say.
Let's talk about your work. What was your responsibilities to the ambassadors? My
responsibility was to oversee and manage, of course, I had a staff. Initially, I didn't. Then, as you grow in the system, you become manager. I would oversee all of the communication aspect of the embassy for the ambassador, the telegraphing, just getting information to and from Washington to our other embassies, whether it's by IT, by satellite, by diplomatic pouch. I oversaw all of that. Then as I became a manager, I, of course, became the chief communications officer for the ambassador. So anything dealing with that, I was accountable for. Then, of course, my staff were accountable to me. I did basically that. It was for classified information as well as non-classified, unclassified information. It was a big responsibility, because if something goes wrong with communications, I don't care how good of an ambassador or a political officer or a consular officer you are, if you can't get that information back to Washington in a timely manner, in the form that it's supposed to be in, then you've got a problem. So I think I did very well. I worked better under stress. So it was a piece of cake for me. And that's why I couldn't do some of the more laid-back countries because nothing basically was happening. Maybe a few marches about snow peas or something like that. But nothing that was earth-shaking where if it can't get back to Washington, it would be bad.
You said to yourself, your brothers and sisters said that you were going to go wherever it was easy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you didn't. You went where it was hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah, and they have mentioned that. And they're like, we can't see, how could you go to these places? You were so scary. You didn't want to, do anything. Well, I guess because, back then I had all these brothers and sisters, so I was just being bounced around. Let's say we would go in the potato field. It's no different, what was 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old going to do when you had all these big brothers and sisters? So it was being built up in me, I don't want to be pushed around. But I do want to do something, and I think that's where the seed started growing. I want to get out there. I want to be the main person.
You talk about in your book about being prepared and being overly prepared. How did the Foreign Service help train you to not only be prepared for one eventuality, but multiples?
When I first joined, they're like, it's showtime. This is not a career where you learn how to be prepared. You come prepared. Well, they do hire sometimes new, fresh out of college, but we prepare you. We have a Foreign Service Institute. You bring what got you to the interview and hired. After that, then they send you, to one of the schools. Like for me, I went to the communication school. So when you get your assignment, when you go out there and your plane lands, it's showtime. You cannot make mistakes. You are prepared mentally, well as intellectually. If you can't perform, of course, they might bring you back and retrain you, but after that, you're out. So why I knew I had to be prepared and take in everything State Department said about, this is not a joke, that, this is your government and national security. All that depends on you. Not necessarily me, but the individual going out. I just knew that this is what I had to be serious about. And also because I didn't want to go back to small town USA as a failure again. So they scared the heck out of me, in other words, into ensuring that I was prepared and learned and did not take it as a long vacation.
In your book, you discuss how you transformed yourself in the Foreign Service, even with complications. sexism, racism, culture shaming, insubordination, hatred. What drove you when you had all these things happening to you, sometimes day after day?
What kept me in the Foreign Service, even though I knew all those things were there?
And all those things were wrong.
Very simple. I wanted to travel, and I did not want to go back to small town, which is hometown, USA, be shamed or having to start all over again. So I'm like, you know what? People are the same wherever they are, in whatever position they have. And I hate to speak in general terms, but most people, if they're raised a certain way, that's who they are. They might can change some, but they are who they are. Just because they, wear a white shirt and a white blouse and a black skirt doesn't mean that they are different. So if I was trying to escape, let's say, racism because of the color of my skin back in Georgia, there's no need to run to the Foreign Service because there's racist in the Foreign Service from what I experienced. There's just, sexism, all that's there. So I decided that, why not have this nice lifestyle where I can see the world and serve as a public servant for my country? I'll just work around all this craziness because if I was back home at Walmart or at a company, a Fortune 500, I would have to do it as well. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. You work your way up to the top grade of the Foreign Service without being invited to be a part of the senior Foreign Service. Why was that so important to you?
Well, it was important because it was a sense of accomplishment. When I started out, we didn't have a lot of blacks, and especially black females, in the Foreign Service, and definitely not in the field that I was in. I was with all white men for several years, and then some white females started coming. More. I'm not saying that they were not there. I'm like, you know what? I just don't want a job, where I work for folks. I want to have folks work with me and for me, and I can't do that at this grade level, at the lower grade level. I have to work harder, get promoted, and get to those levels where I am, in charge. So that's what I did. I just, worked hard, and the promotion started coming. I don't play around. I did not play around when it came to my job. I enjoyed myself, but it was all about the job. I had integrity. I'm dedicated. It was just fun, in doing it. And next thing you know, I was sitting in Afghanistan, and my husband called me and said, "Congratulations." I'm like, "Why?" He said, "You got your one. You was on the promotion list." And I'm like, I literally exhale. I did it. I can retire now. So about 2 years later, 1.5 years later, I retired. I didn't need to stick around. Everyone was very disappointed. All the people who were close to me, who I mentored, and they basically like, "Vella, please don't go. You can make it into the Foreign Service easily." And I'm like, no, I've done what I needed to do. I don't want to hold a spot just to have a job. I'm not going to make a whole lot more money, just a whole lot of stress. I want to go home, enjoy my family, back to the hometown. And that's exactly what I did. I finished my 1 year in Afghanistan, and I went to Tunisia because I just didn't want to retire out of Afghanistan. It was just too tense. I needed to calm, just relax a bit. And well, I actually was jumping from the fire to the frying pan. Tunisia wasn't that relaxed, but still, I did. And after about a year, it was a 2-year assignment. I decided that I'm done. So I went into the office, told my boss, I'm going to finish 1 year, and I'm going back to Washington. I'm going to retire. He didn't believe it, and here I am, retired, enjoying it.
This book doesn't seem like a book of stories. It more seems like a book of lessons, a book of a mom telling their son, their daughter, these are the mistakes I made. These are the experiences I have. Don't make these mistakes. Am I wrong?
Actually, you hit it on the nail, because I've been keeping notes for years just because I was leading a fascinating life. And people telling me through the years, write a book, Bella, please, you've got to tell these stories. And I'm like, yeah. So when I retired, I'm like, I don't think so. I don't want to relive all this. But my son, Michael, told me, Mom, you have to write this book. Who else in our little hometown will ever become a diplomat, in the future, the immediate future? Write it for my kids. I want them to be proud of their heritage, so write it for them. So I started out writing this book as wanting to write it as a legacy, just stories to tell my grand and great-grands that you can make it no matter who you are, because they're mixed race, and I want to make sure that they knew both sides, their father's side. So when I reached out to my collaborator of the book, I was interviewing some, and I had to tell a little about my story, and she said, no way, you're not just going to write a story. You have lived an abundant life, and it can still be a legacy for your grandkids. We need to write it where others can learn from it as well. We need to write it based on your values, because you seem to have very strong values. Just don't write a story. Write stories within each chapter based on the value, one of your traits. And I'm like, okay, and I'm glad we did it this way. And actually, my grandkids love it. They go with me book signings. They're like, oh, we're going to do a Muddy Roads trip. And I'm like, yep, let's get packed up. And my grandson wants to read it. He's only 7, and he's a very good reader, and he wants to read it. I'm like, not yet. He knows the title and he knows what it's about, but I don't want him to read it right now. So it started out as a legacy to my kids to ensure for my son and my offsprings to learn that, hey, life is not easy, but just stay the course and have faith. You definitely attain your dreams.
I'm going to read one quote from the book because I think it's the most powerful quote from the entire piece. It comes from the balcony when you were in Tanzania with a suitor who had potential. You know exactly what quote I'm going to be talking about. I'm trying to be serious.
Yes.
Quote, come close and turn your back to me, Vella. I did it. Now close your eyes. I did it. Now without thinking, fall back into my arms. I did not do it. With eyes opened wide, I turned toward him. And if I do not fall, I asked, then someone else will. He walked away and never looked back.
Absolutely. Oh, but you're bringing chills to me. Yeah, I remember that evening vividly.
And you never saw him again?
I saw him, but it was like a switch. It was just turned off. Actually, he worked at the embassy. And so we saw each other, but we were like hot and heavy. But I think he wanted to take it to a different level, and he wanted to see if I was all in with him. And I could not do it. I'm a protector, especially of myself, and I wasn't ready, and I just could not give myself to someone like that. I'm married now, almost 20 years, to Shaka. I fell in his arm, and I don't know why. It just I don't know if it was a timing or he just had a different, this feel and touch about him. But at that time in my life, when that guy told me that, there was no way. I was on a high in my career and my social life, and I knew him, and I knew that if I fell, he would say, I got her. And with me, if I make a promise to fall back in his arms, I would stick with it, and I believe I would have been, that would have been marriage 3, unsuccessful.
We're talking to Vella Mbenna, author of Muddy Roads, Blue Skies, Beyond the Mic. What was your best moment as a diplomat?
Oh, my goodness. You want an incident or a country? Or
Best moment as a diplomat. I'm leaving it wide open for you.
Best moment as a diplomat. Okay. This is what it was. I was on my way to Tanzania, to Africa, for the very first time. The first part of my career was all about other countries because I was afraid. I'm African American, and I was afraid to go to Africa because of all the things that I would see on TV and I've heard from other diplomats. But something happened And I said, I have to go now. I have to take my child to Africa to see his roots. And on the way there, well, when we were about to land in Dar es Salaam, I looked down and something just came over me. Maybe because, I'm African American, I was going to Africa. But I'm like, oh my God, I would never, ever, ever be able to come to Africa like this. I thank God for the Foreign Service. I thank God that they selected me to serve in Africa. They could have selected someone else. And to me, it was like it is the most memorable memory of being a diplomat, that I can go anywhere I want to. And even if I'm afraid to, if the government wanted me to go and send me, I would go and I would overcome whatever fears that I have. But I always remember that, like, thank God for being a diplomat, because I don't know if I would have ever made it there. I would have been too afraid all my life to go to the motherland.
If I ask you your best moment, I got to ask you, what was your worst moment as a diplomat?
My worst moment was, and I won't call the post, I think it's in the book, but I was really gung-ho. Like I said, I was, just dedicated. I wanted to do my job, and I wanted to learn, almost like my grandson, Micah, he reminds me of me. But I was at one post known to send people with the medical conditions, to kind of recruit. So it was kind of laid back, not a whole lot to do. And so, but I got there, and I was young and energetic. Was doing my job, trying to learn more and do more. Hey, I'm vibrant, I had energy. And my supervisor, because when he came back from wherever he was, when I applied to go to another country, because I wasn't given the opportunity to do what I needed to do to grow at that post, he was very upset about it. So he called me in and he started calling me names, not nice names. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, why? The system is there. If you don't like a post or whatever, you can get out or you can try to transfer. It was just really bad. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm getting out of the Foreign Service. And I thought about it, and I'm like, no, I'm not getting out, because people are who they are. I'll probably encounter more people like this. So I'm just going to suck it up, let him say whatever he wants to say. But when he crosses the line, I'm going to walk out of his office and he can do whatever he wants with me. And he crossed the line, and it was a discriminatory remark. And I just said, I'm not going to talk anymore. Do whatever you want to do. And I walked out. That was, that wasn't good. And it'll be with me forever.
Family and home is so important to you. Now that you're retired, how are you spending your time? I
work for State Department part-time from home, as a matter of fact, but that's very easy. The year after I retired in 2015, about 6 months later, my grandson was diagnosed with autism, and my son still struggling, going to school and working, he and his girlfriend. So I asked him if I could just take him down to Florida, where my retirement home was, just put him in a different environment, let him go through his programs. And they did, smart people. So the past 2.5 years, I have been a grandmother, running back and forth to school, to after-school activities, and it's been great. And thank goodness for my husband, he and I decided on a place about an hour and a half away from my hometown. So I have the opportunity to go back and forth, with ease, to see my aging mother, who is almost 94 years old, and her aunt, my aunt, her sister, which is going on 101, and bond with my sisters, They don't know this Vella, but I'm just having a great time, visiting family and being with family in my household, making sure that he is prepared, using the tools that he's given to be, as successful as possible in life. So I'm glad I'm retired. I mean, I don't regret it at all. My husband's still in the Foreign Service, so that's great. I've got the best of both worlds. He's overseas right now on a company tour, but his next assignment, we're all going to pack up and go. So I can be a trailing spouse versus the diplomat.
We've had fun with Vella Mbenna Beyond the Mic, but time's running out. So it's now time for the Rocky Nate. First thing that comes to your mind. No pressure.
Oh, Lord, that's scary.
Last antique you bought.
A pot, frying pan.
Last gift you bought, and who'd you buy it for?
Vella. I bought a ring for myself.
Most interesting meal you ever ate when traveling as part of the Foreign Service?
Balut, an egg in the Philippines that was like horribly rotten, but I ate it.
One food from your travels you'd eat over and over and over again.
It's called mbuzi. It's roasted goat meat on the grill, outside grill, indigenous to Tanzania, well, East Africa. Love it. Can't wait to get some more.
Last 3 songs you heard.
Oh, one was church song, Amazing Grace, in Church Sunday. Don't Worry, Be Happy. I heard that the other day and thought about my spouse, and I can't think of a third one, the title. What
event in your life would make a great movie, and who would you want to play you?
The bombing of the embassy, the prologue in my book. That day was a long day and a movie in itself. And I would want my niece, Tia Gonzalez. She wants to be an actress, and she just went off to college a few months ago, and I told her that once my book become a movie, I want her to play me. She said, Auntie, I would be honored. I hope your dream comes true.
If you had to write another chapter for that book, what would you have named that chapter?
I would name it, oh, gosh. Ooh, fun.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Most cherished ambassador in the Foreign Service.
Oh, I can't, all of them. I'm a diplomat. I can, all of them. I never had a bad ambassador. They're my leader, and I would not have been at a post if I could not serve under them. So, but there are some that, that I like for different reasons. But I would say one who lives in New Mexico now. He's just been very supportive of me. And one reason that I like him the most is because I had collateral duty as an EEO counselor at that post, and I used to brief him. And, he told me one day, he said, Bella, he said, you're one of the best officers I've ever had. And that meant a lot to me because, I'm a specialist, even though we're all considered Foreign Service officers, but I'm a specialist, Foreign Service specialist. And the fact that he set up all the folks in the embassy, I was the best. And yeah, I'll always love him and thank him for telling me that, because it made me kept on the track that I was on and keep getting better.
She transformed her life from 2 failed marriages into a life as a diplomat in the Foreign Service. Best way to describe it, read her book, Muddy Roads, Blue Skies. Vella Mbenna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was fun.
And that, my friends, is Beyond the Mic.